Many of my previous videos were devoted to combat or magic and how they compare to their D&D counterparts. I devoted barely any attention to another important aspect of the system – social interactions. Unlike the previous topics, there won't be much to compare it to, because social interaction rules in D&D are almost non-existent. Even though every edition has a few social skills, I have never actually seen them being used as per rules as written. The GM just assigned an arbitrary DC that you had to beat, and you made your skill roll. What about GURPS? Is it the same, or is it more detailed? As always, the answer is yes, because the social interaction rules in GURPS can be adjusted to fit the game from being almost non-existent, like in GURPS Dungeon Fantasy, or highly detailed, like in GURPS Social Engineering. This is best described in the final chapter of GURPS Social Engineering, that is called Throw Away This Book. Every game is different, every gaming group is different, so you might just not need all the mechanics for talking and just talk. It's all up to you, but you should make sure that you're on the same page with your players when it comes to social interactions in your game. For example, some groups do not roleplay shopping, but some players would love to haggle and talk with a merchant. For some groups, saying "I socialize and roll carousing" would be enough, and some would like to roleplay the situation in more detail. In some games, the genre conventions assume that people of any status level can talk freely to one another, while in other games, a high-status noble will simply ignore a lowly peasant or even punish him for daring to speak with him. All these approaches are valid. You just have to make sure that everyone's expectations are the same. GURPS Social Engineering, if I recall correctly, won the Annie Award. Not long ago, it even got a new cover with some questionable art that has nothing to do with social engineering. Seriously, why this? But before we delve into GURPS Social Engineering, it is best to discuss all things social in the GURPS basic set. Most social interactions in GURPS are based on reaction roles and influence roles. A reaction role is a role made by the GM to determine how his NPCs react to the player characters. This role is always optional. The GM may predetermine reactions, but sometimes it's more fun to let the dice control the reactions. Unlike skill rolls, the higher the reaction roll is, the better is the result. Many traits give bonuses or penalties to reaction rolls, and many of these modifiers are situational. Reaction rolls are described on page 494 of GURPS basic set. It should be noted that reaction rolls are modified not only by traits, but also by appropriate behavior of the players. This is what I love about social interactions in GURPS. When in D&D the so-called face character would just get a high charisma stat and dump his skill points into diplomacy, every social character in GURPS is different. One might get around just by being very physically attractive. Another might have useful contacts. Another might be a skilled negotiator. And the other might be a high-status respectable person whom people just do not want to argue with. The book also emphasizes something important. Never substitute random die rolls for reason and logic. Even if you have a +10 reaction modifier and walk around the streets slapping people, nobody will react positively to you. That section also suggests using predetermined reactions in some cases. For example, a hermit might react at -2 to all visitors, but his reaction cannot be better than neutral. This is the case of a predetermined penalty and best case reaction. Predetermined bonuses and worst case reaction are possible too, but only for unusually friendly NPCs. If a player gets a reaction roll result that he doesn't like, he may change his approach and try again. Bribing, offering a new information or deal, using an influence skill, all these count as new approaches. However, if an NPC feels annoyed, the GM may impose a cumulative -2 reaction penalty until the player waits for a reasonable time between attempts. Influence roles are a bit different. An influence role is a deliberate attempt to ensure a positive reaction from an NPC. In suitable circumstances, a player character can make an influence roll instead of a normal reaction roll. The influence skills are diplomacy, fast talk, intimidation, savoir-faire, sex appeal, and streetwise. In some situations, other skills can be used as influence skills, such as law, propaganda, or psychology. Typically, all your personal reaction modifiers apply here, but the skill being used or the GM may rule that some modifiers do not apply. Some NPCs might be more receptive to some influence skill, but not to the others. The book suggests imposing a penalty from -2 to -10 for using an inappropriate influence skill. As you can see, many things here are up to the GM. To influence an NPC, you roll a quick contest of your influence skill versus the subject's will. If you win, you get a good reaction, or very good in case of sex appeal. But if you fail, you get a bad reaction, or very bad in case of specious intimidation. Diplomacy is a special case, as even if you fail, the GM makes a normal reaction roll and uses the best result of 2. So it is not always wise to attempt to influence the NPCs. Sometimes it is better to let the normal reaction roll dictate the outcome. Have you noticed that everything here was devoted to NPCs reacting to player characters, and player characters influencing the NPCs? What about the opposite? The GM should not make influence rolls on behalf of NPCs and tell the players how to react. Typically, players form an opinion of an NPC based on the GM's portrayal of the character. If a player character has a trait that makes him react better to certain individuals, the player should take that into account when role-playing the interaction. However, NPCs still can make influence rolls against the PCs. But they work differently. When an NPC makes a successful influence roll against a PC, the GM should apply the NPC's margin of victory as a bonus or penalty, as appropriate, to the PC's die rolls when dealing with this NPC. For example, a sex appeal roll with a margin of victory of 2 might impose a -2 penalty on self-control rolls for the PC's lecherousness at disadvantage, -2 to detect lies skill, and so on. The reaction table itself is on page 560 of GURPS basic set. It has not only results for general reaction, but also for more specific uses of the reaction rolls: potential combat situations, commercial transactions, requests for aid, requests for information, and loyalty. There is also a list of appropriate ways to modify each application of the reaction roll. GURPS Social Engineering adds some new ones: confrontation with authority, gaining admission, hiring, response to information, recreation, and seduction. This video covered just the basics, but I want to make more videos in this series that cover specific components of social interactions, skills, traits, etc. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.